Hello, everybody. I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese to high schoolers out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. But I also teach English Language Arts 11. And although I feel like I'm a pretty good language teacher at this point, for some reason I've been struggling with my English Language Arts class. I feel like a first-year teacher. My entire bag of tricks that I've been using for decades with my world language students just don't work on students who are forced to take an English class. So, my district mandates that we have to give final exams on the last 2 days of school. We get an early release so that we can give final exams, and if we didn't give final exams, we wouldn't get the early release. So I was thinking about what kind of final exam could I do with my English 11 class, and I sat down and thought about these are the really important things that we hit this year, I feel like. I mean, I could have done a review on, oh, this is the Crucible and this is the Great Gatsby, and but I wanted to talk about techniques instead, because I think the techniques, I mean, obviously, the techniques are what's going to follow them through senior year of high school and maybe on into college or whatever writing that they do in their life. It's the techniques. They're not going to remember what happened in the Crucible. So I reviewed the techniques, and the techniques that I felt were the most important were writing a hook. I think that's crucially important, especially in our age of generative AI. A hook is going to make your writing sparkle in a way that generative AI can't do. So we reviewed types of hooks, and I wanted them to understand figurative language, how to use figurative language. Again, this is something humans do better than generative AI. So we reviewed figurative language. And I didn't hit this as much as I had wanted to this year, mostly because I had to march lockstep with the other teachers who were teaching English Language Arts 11, and so I was a little locked into how much time I had with each thing. Showing versus telling, I think, is really crucial for good writing. I mean, this is like such a difference in whether or not the writing is interesting and engaging. So we reviewed that a little bit, not as much as I had wanted to because we didn't hit it as hard as I wanted to, but I wanted to try and give one last push for it, but I didn't grade on it. We talked about setting, so I wanted to make sure they understood the setting, and I hid this from them. And character, of course, describing the character, we worked on that a lot, and I hid this from them. And then as I'm explaining it to them, I said the biome and the skin, and then I could see the lights go off in their eyes because I said, we're going to play Minecraft for the final exam. Okay, I'm going to give you 20 minutes to play Minecraft. That's going to be 1 day and 1 night cycle. And then you get to write about your experience from the character's voice. Okay, so I felt like this would get them to give me some really authentic writing. And boy, oh boy, they were excited. All right, so before the big day, I wanted them to think about how they were going to spin things. What was going to be the story going on in their head while they were playing, so that when I said computers off, it's time to write, they had already kind of formulated their story. Okay, so, and everybody had played Minecraft. There was no one in the class this year that hadn't played Minecraft. Occasionally, I do Minecraft stuff in my other classes, and occasionally there's someone who has never played Minecraft, or they haven't played it since they were 8 years old or something. But everyone could pretty much imagine Minecraft, and so they knew what to expect. So I gave them these choices. You're a settler in colonial America, the Old West. English Language Arts 11, the focus is on the American dream. So I thought this was a good one that they could do if they wanted. Or you're shipwrecked on a weird island, you're an explorer in space, you're in an amusement park where the AI is taken over. I'm thinking of Westworld, the classic Westworld. You're in the Matrix and you accidentally eat the purple pill because blue pill, red pill, it's purple now, okay? You're having a fever dream. Oh, look at that. Things got formatted weird. You're having a fever dream. You're dead, and this is purgatory before your judgment. Oh, look at that, misspelled judgment. That's great. You're on a reality game show. You did a Mary Poppins into the chalk drawing thing. This is yet another Tron reboot. You're in the Hunger Games. You're an actor on a TV show. It's all fake, but you have to pretend. And then I asked for others, and I had one student saying he was going to be a Viking, so I wrote that down. I'm like, great. I just want you thinking about this while you're playing, because it'll make your writing a little faster if you've already had this story kind of going around in your head. All right, so before the big day, I wanted them to decide on their situation. That's the previous slide. Decide on their character. Are they going to play themselves or are they going to play somebody else? Are they going to be writing in first person or in third person? And everybody chose first person, which was fine by me. But I wanted to give them that option. And I wanted them to write their hook because that was going to take a little bit of time to think about. And I figured as long as they knew which of these things they were going to do, and they had an idea of how Minecraft is, then they could certainly come up with at least a hook that they might throw away when the rubber hit the road, but most of them could come up with a hook so that we wouldn't be cutting into our precious writing time on Tuesday when we had the final. So that worked really well. I'm glad I did that, because that got them into it, and that got them thinking. They could focus on what a hook was and craft it very solidly before the writing. Okay, so on the big day, I reminded them, you got to describe the setting, which is the biome, and you got to describe the character. Put that someplace in there, not at the very beginning, because at the very beginning you've got your hook, sprinkle it in, but I'm looking for these things. Next. Okay, so then I had this up on the board to remind them what was going to be in their writing. Yeah, I can move this around, and you can't see this because it's off on the edge, but I reminded them what I'm going to be grading on is the hook, your use of figurative language, and your description of the setting, and your description of the character. So that was up there as support for them, and they could ask me questions while they were writing. That was fine, and I wrote my own in front of them, as I always do, because I like to model for them. All right, now did it work? Some of the students, this was a difficult class. I had more students flunk this class than I've had flunk in 2 years, the last 2 years of teaching language, because I had students who just didn't do the big essays, and so they flunked. Those students didn't get a lot of practice on stuff, and those students wrote, but basically they wrote a shopping list. They wrote, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, in order, okay? So for those students, they were 100% engaged. They turned in something major that they hadn't turned in all year, but it wasn't sparkling writing. So I tried. But for the students that even there are a couple of students who turned in this who hadn't turned in other stuff, and they wrote really well. Okay, so like here's an example. This was the hook. Okay, this was a great hook. And look at this, great hook. So I did have a lot of good writing. And most importantly, this was a class that I had struggled with all friggin' year long, and they were 100 million% engaged on our final exam. They were excited. They were working. It was great. So now this is my second year teaching English Language Arts 11. I'm feeling braver and I'm feeling bolder. So I'm like more willing to leave the status quo and squeeze in time for what I want to do in the way that I want to teach. Because like this year, I did my Great Gatsby escape room, and I'm really glad I did that. I did the Crucible mock trial. Wow, the students in their reflection at the end of the year, they loved the mock trial. So definitely I'm going to be continuing that, but I was just told next year I'm going to do English Language Arts 9 instead of 11, which in one respect is better because I like the literature that we'll be reading better. I had to hide from my students that I really don't like The Great Gatsby, so I'm kind of happy I'm never going to read Great Gatsby again, at least not next year. I like To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm really happy to be doing Shakespeare, and yeah, it's Romeo and Juliet, but hey, it's Shakespeare, so I'm happy about that. But again, everything that I've invented this year is getting thrown out the window and I'm doing new stuff next year. So I'm worried about that. The next thing I'm worried about is our district is following professional learning teams from Solution Tree. And our district, I keep pushing back on this. I keep pushing. This is the hill I'm going to die on, people. There is a difference between formative assessments and summative assessments. And the district is trying to push this in a way so that we're all clones. So, hey, this teacher's doing this. Everybody has to do this. I don't want to teach like that. I like my games. I like my projects. I feel that in English language arts class, you should be reading and you should be writing. I don't want to give multiple choice tests. I want you reading. I want you writing. So I'm worried about that. But I am going to carve out a day early in the year. I'm going to introduce the hook. I'm going to introduce figurative language. And then as my first writing assignment, so that I can have a baseline of how well the students are writing, how much of this do they already understand. I am going to carve out a day to do this because I think it sets the stage for engagement. The students were totally engaged. I think I'll get them on my side faster if I do this. And I think I'll get more authentic writing out of them than if I say, all right, using the themes we saw in Romeo and Juliet, write me an essay on blah, 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 blah. No, I want more authentic writing. I want to show them that if they're interested in something, the words are going to flow out of their pencil far faster than if I say, here's a rubric, follow the rubric and blah, blah, blah. So I'm definitely going to carve out some time for this. Yes, I'm already working on my tequila mock trial because the mock trial worked so well in English Language Arts 11, and I'm trying to think about my angle for teaching Romeo and Juliet and what sonnets are and all sorts of stuff like that. So stay tuned because this channel is not for me to give you great ideas. This channel is for me to work through my ideas and hear myself talking aloud so that I know what I'm doing when I teach English Language Arts. Thanks for indulging me.